What's up, podcast family? I'm Joe Lemon. Thank you so much for tuning into the Real Value Exchange. And today I want to talk about a subject that I've really always been close to. Now, I work in it full time. I work in healthcare, and I've been, infatuated with healthcare ever since, I was young, and my family came out with a whole bunch of chronic diseases, from high blood pressure, all the basic stuff, type 1 diabetes, the stuff that most of our families have, right? And it wasn't just my inner circle, it was my extended family and beyond. And I launched my personal training business back when I was in college, mainly because I wanted to help people just stay active, because I really bought into the movement as medicine way of living, right? But fast forward, I got into the industry, now I'm a medical device, and it's evolved, right? Things have changed, and healthcare is not what it used to be. There's still a lot of problems. There's still a lot of lack of transparency. There's still a lack of healthcare workers out there. Patients don't really get a lot of time with their physicians as they would like. The insurance has pretty much trained us. And I'm not going to blame them anymore, but the insurance has really trained people to really hand off their actual responsibility for being healthy to them. And that whole fee for service model, and not thinking about the long-term implications of really just trying to get ahead and trying to stay healthy and move and really have a life where you thrive. Unfortunately, I believe in this world, there's only two ways to really live. You either thriving and you're trying to do all things to be on the offense of life, and you're staying active, staying mobile, trying to keep yourself vibrant, whatever that means to you, or you're in a slow decline. I don't think there's really the status quo. I think status quo is one of the biggest competitions that we have out there, and we definitely see this throughout healthcare, because people are stuck in not wanting to change how the times have changed. I mean, and so many things have changed. Even the laws have changed. You have direct access to physical therapy now. Before, you used to have to go through your primary care doctor, and they used to have to write a script, and then you would go through a 15-minute quick little exercise booklet. I've been through it. I've always believed in physical therapy, but it was hard for me to go home and do those exercises that they used to give me. So, fast forward, things have changed, man. Things are changing for the better. And I really think that this is going to really spur up a whole way that I think people are going to live for way longer by us getting ahead of so many of these common issues that are out there and trying to focus on thriving instead of just getting by. So today I got a really special guest. Got Dr. Dan Czajkowski. He's the physical therapist, strength coach, personal trainer, and athletic trainer. So he covers pretty much the whole gambit when it comes to everything rehab science-wise. And I mean, if you've got any bump, bang, sprain, tendonitis, I mean, you would go see one of those guys, right? Mobility issues, you're going to see your strength coach, hopefully, and there's no pain involved. And we talk about when's the right time to engage the right sector, because each one of these groups now has evolved into really taking on this cash-based type of service. And I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with this, but now you can pay cash and have your own athletic trainer. So if you're very active, it makes sense for you to reach out to maybe some athletic trainers when you get a sprain, opposed to going into your doctor so you can just get some Advil and rest. All right. And there's a whole gambit of these services. You got sports chiropractors, you got sports physical therapists. They can all kind of help, and there's a bleeding into each one of these different roles. So hence, this is why we got to have the conversation. This is why I got Dr. Dan with me today, and we're going to dive into the weeds of some of those. And when's the right time to actually engage the right people? And, this is kind of what the whole goal of this show really is about. When it first came out, I wanted to talk nothing about, everything was about sales and marketing in the latest tactics that are out there. And that was cool. It was great. It was really a time for me to kind of look at it and say, great, I can, bring on people, interview them, and kind of glean jewels about what's the hottest things to kind of do so I can stay on top of my sales and marketing game. And okay, that works. But, being in the industry, I was like, man, it makes so much more sense to really bring on these thought leaders. And so one of the goals of the show is to really highlight a lot of those thought leaders and people that are teaching people new ways to live, right? And whether this is in healthcare or whether it's in some other industries, I want to bring on those people that are challenging people to think, and hopefully they can move you into action. It might take a little bit more to move you into action, but at least challenge you to think about how you view yourself, think about your current beliefs, why you do those things. And so Dr. Dan's going to do that today. He's going to get us thinking outside the box, and that's the goal of the show. So with that said, guys, got a lot of cool things that are happening within the Real Value Exchange sphere. Really excited about getting this platform off the ground where I can allow podcasters to easily be found and book. You know, if you're interested in doing an interview-based podcast, I should say, you can get yourself booked on somebody else's show, like myself or some other people, right? So I think this is what's needed for the marketplace, because I got a lot of thoughts and theories about how the world is becoming nothing but this P2P play, and you know, everything's going to go direct to the person. So having direct access is the way to kind of go in healthcare. It's also how it's going to happen in business. That's what the internet does. It cuts out the middleman everywhere. So with that said, guys, without further delay, let's get into today's conversation with Dr. Oh, and right before we get into it with Dr. Dan, please go rate and subscribe to the podcast. This always helps me out, helps me get found by other podcasters, helps me gets better exposure to other guests. And so if there's any value that's being exchanged here, if you're feeling these conversations, please go rate it and subscribe. And Dr. Dan also is launching his own virtual physical therapy and wellness solution. So stay tuned for that, and I'll have some more of those details in the show notes. Okay, let's get into it.
Yep. I've been up here for the last 3 months. I'm a travel physical therapist. I've been doing it for about 1.5 years now. And so taking advantage of some opportunities I'm from the Midwest, so getting out of the Midwest is always a nice thing whenever I can. I feel like that's a traditional Midwestern thing to say, but I get
it. I'm from Pittsburgh, man, so I kind of understand.
Yeah. So I've been doing that for about 1.5 years now. I work in an outpatient setting, and I have a background in athletic training too, and strength and conditioning. So I try to stick to that kind of scene if I can whenever it comes to like working. I know a lot of other travel PTs work in different settings, but that's been where I've spent pretty much my whole career. So
that's pretty cool, man. I mean, so do you realize, well, I should ask it this way. Do you get more opportunities because you have that strength training background as well as with the PT and the actual athletic training? Does that kind of help out with that?
Yeah, it definitely kind of helps, like in certain settings. Definitely whenever there's a clinic that is looking for somebody who has experience with the active population, but it also just kind of helps like understanding the whole picture of rehab to strength training. And that's something that I believe, and I bias this way because of my credentials, but I believe that's something that everybody kind of needs. I mean, the goal of physical therapy for a lot of things is to help get you to be independent. And a lot of the ways of being independent is trying to continue what we taught you. And that usually includes some form of exercise. So giving people tips on how to continue their training and how to try to make it manageable but progressive over time is like, that goes right into what we do. So it definitely it can open doors in some ways, definitely more in the sports world, which we hadn't talked about before, but that's something I actually came from. I came from working as more of a sports PT, and kind of transitioned to this more of a travel lifestyle now, just kind of trying something different, which definitely haven't regretted the decision to travel more. I feel like a lot of people would agree with me in that way. If you have the opportunity, you might as well.
Sure, man. Sure. I mean, it probably gives you a chance to kind of take your family to like different levels and allow them to get like exposed to different environments. I mean, because coming from the whole Midwest and then being up in Alaska, I'd imagine it has to have some differences in what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Oh yeah, it completely rocks your world for a little while. Just like, I can't believe I'm in the place that I am, and it just gets you a little more cultured, and just meeting people from different areas. It's really fun. It's really engaging too.
Well, so right before we dive into talking about some of the actual topics in like healthcare or trends, I should say, how'd you get started in like healthcare in the very beginning? What was your motivation to kind of get into the field?
Yeah, it's somewhat of a common story. I feel like I got an injury in high school. I tore my ACL in high school, and then worked with a really good athletic trainer at the time, as well as a physical therapist. And that kind of introduced me to the healthcare world. I had never really dealt with it before that. And then a year after I tore my first ACL, I tore it again. So I had to do another round of therapy, which it's like back then it was just, it's like 6 months. It's like you get 6 months covered. And so I spent about a better part of a full year within a 2-year period inside of a clinic 2 to 3 times a week. So, so that really opened my eyes to like that realm. And then actually my mom was a physical therapist too, but I didn't really associate that with like my kind of like trajectory at the time.
Yeah.
But when it came down to picking a major in college, we kind of like I went through kind of a series of like, oh, maybe I should be an engineer. And then I was like, oh, maybe I could do athletic training. That's something that sounds interesting. And like I talked to my athletic trainer who had worked with me for that better part of 2 years. And he got me excited about it. And so I went into athletic training. That was kind of my first step into healthcare, was trying to study that. And I still love athletic training, but when it came down to graduation and kind of seeing the outlook of where athletic training is going, there's a lot of unique opportunities with athletic training, but there's also a lot of challenging work environments and schedules that, like, if my goal long term is to be a family man if I can. So it's like that's something every athletic trainer I've talked to, is just challenging to kind of do the things they need to do to be there for their family, but also be there for athletic training. Because I don't know how much familiarity you have with athletic training, but like they're usually working non-typical hours. So it's like after school times, because they're either with a high school or with a college. And in the college setting, you kind of work whenever the coach is like ready for you to work. So like whenever practices are going on or whenever strength conditioning sessions are going on. So you got to be present at a lot of random times throughout the day. And the schedule's always changing. So it can be kind of tough. But then I got interested in physical therapy because I just felt like I needed more diversity in my career. So, but that's kind of the route of how I got to physical therapy, and then worked in an outpatient clinic for about 5 years. And that's where I did most of my sports medicine experience in physical therapy, and then just decided to try something different. So that's kind of the trajectory of how I got where.
But you know, it's pretty cool though, because I was talking to one athletic trainer here in like SoCal last week, and she was telling me that she's starting her own cash-based business as well. It's kind of a thing that she's kind of rolling out and really trying to get into, and more so trying to help lots of weekend warriors just kind of be their on-site athletic trainers, similar to what she was doing for the college. So I thought that was a pretty smooth play.
Oh yeah, that's something like I couldn't have imagined would have been a thing by the time. Like this was, I mean, I graduated athletic training school in 2009, so that's 10 years ago.
Yep.
And I that's awesome that I've heard of those opportunities coming about, and it's awesome that it kind of expanded that way, because I feel like athletic trainers have been very undervalued for a long time, and now they're having opportunities to do that, and platforms to actually like make, do their own side business and or in entrepreneurship is like awesome, because that's something I think that world definitely needs more of.
100%, man. I mean, what's funny? We were kind of talking about this previously, but I think not the only missing piece, but one of the missing pieces from athletic training and even a little bit of physical therapy, from my understanding from the outside, is that it needs a platform that could help maximize what you guys do. I mean, something that's kind of centralized for the general population, or at least for that active, population, I should say. I mean, because there's people like myself who beat up on ourselves, and, we get constant these little nicks and bruises, just strains, because I'm just 36 and trying to roll around with some 19-year-old, like,
Yep.
I mean, so it's not time for me to go to the hospital, but it is time for me to make sure I do something about it, and so that's where I really think that this is kind of cool that you're in this side of the actual world, because I see it growing. I don't see it really slowing down. So I think you guys got some good things coming.
Yeah, for sure. It's amazing I'm very impressed with what people can do whenever they are it's almost like athletic trainers have been pushed to a point to like find a need to like specialize more, even further than what they've been doing, and try to find more access to patients they can help and their clients they can help. So that's just really cool. That's really stokes me to hear that people are doing that, because it's like something I know that they've struggled with a long time. And even that overlaps into PT a little bit too. Like PTs are in a lot of ways, compared to where they could be, like they are being undervalued in the healthcare system. And so it's like, it's kind of coming from both ends. I'm seeing the whole picture, I guess. And so with my experience in the education I've had, and then the context I keep up with, professional context I keep up with, it's like, it's everywhere. It's like we're in this rehab setting. It's definitely like, it has its place in healthcare, but it's definitely undervalued still. And so, but I think people are, the more and more people are becoming aware of like the way medicine works, I think they're wanting to have something that's a little bit more tangible that can help them, that's conservative care, more so than just like going into get x-rays, MRIs, and then prescribe drugs. And then it's like, oh, well, then you have to, take a period of rest. And it's like, what else do I do? And then a lot of doctors still are just like, well, just wait. And so it's unfortunate, or just like, we'll see how it goes. And then maybe a surgery. And it's like, that's something that I'm actually really passionate about, is trying to find ways to help improve people's outcomes by like filling in the gaps with some of that, some of those like that conservative care model, like trying to fill in the gaps with like, there's more to your body than just trying to heal it with drugs and time. So that's something I feel really like that we can help out with, whether you're an athletic trainer or a physical therapist. I mean, there's so much opportunity for that.
Man, I would love to talk about that for a little bit, because you're absolutely right. I mean, the fact that, that's kind of been the whole status quo for the past, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years, where it's like, hey, we'll give you a pill, we're going to cut into you, or you just need time to rest, And it's like, those are the three things that the most of the general population kind of hears. And you have to kind of dig a little bit, trying to find, what's some other options I have. It's kind of one of the reasons why I even have this platform that we were talking about, is because I want to try to shine light just out to the general public that there's other things going on that you can do, that could give you that jump prior to kind of just being in that funnel of, surgery, pills, or rest only, What's some opportunity that you're kind of seeing there, man?
Yeah, it's, well, it's kind of the concept of like, I kind of am learning still how to explain it, because I think that's one of the biggest tricky parts that I think PTs have right now is a communication issue. Is a communication issue of what do we actually do with clients? Like, how can we help your pain? And in a way, I feel like other professions have been much better at this than we are. When PTs historically aren't very great at marketing services, we kind of have always been, I think, under the limelight of like physicians for a long time. And it's been kind of like you kind of have to just rely on your physician. So there's been, I think, more of a surge in our field lately to like be more active, be more proactive, get involved in the community, try to teach people what we do. And I think a big part of what we do is like, we kind of just help you move better. We help you function at a higher level. And it doesn't always mean we're going to have you come in and just like work you to death and exercise. It's like, there's a lot of tools that we use, which I think is a common misconception. I think people like, there's a lot of patients who have come to PT over and over, they kind of coined the PT term as being physical torture or some version of that. And so there's this element of like, even when they do get introduced to PT, it's like, they think that that's what they're getting. And sometimes it is. Sometimes we kick your butt because you need to get stronger and you need to push yourself in ways that you haven't pushed yourself outside of seeing us. And so, but there's a lot of just like educational components that go on, like really understanding like what it is that is causing the pain, like what's provoking the pain, why is it limiting you with the certain things that you're having difficulty with, and just educating on like the tissue healing process, but then also educating on what you can do rather than just what you can't do in terms of being active. I think physical therapy is a lot about trying to encourage people and help them learn about how their body's like going to respond to certain scenarios, whether it's that probably got them to the point where they are in pain, or if they had a traumatic injury, then it's just kind of understanding how that process is healing and what we want to focus on at different phases of the rehab process. And so there's a lot of encouragement. There's a lot of trying to just educate and trying to empower them so that they can really feel like they have control, or at least a little bit more control, or at least an understanding over the process that they're going through, rather than just throwing their hands up in the air and just like, well, something's wrong with me and it's not going to get better on its own. So we need to do something to like injection and surgery. It's like, that's kind of one of the biggest challenges that I have as physical therapist, trying to teach that even to someone who comes in my office, like who's already there in the therapy session, let alone teaching it to the general public who may not be as interested in jumping into that physical therapy world yet.
100%, man. I mean, so you know, it's funny too, because you're talking about two things that are big money makers in healthcare: injections and surgery, right? I mean, do you envision this being more of a top-down approach or more of a bottom-up approach as far as trying to get the word out? What's your thoughts on how that should look for the?
Oh man, I think it depends, man. It's like that's like a classic thing we say in healthcare, is it always depends, because it's like I think you need both. I think you need to have good leaders at the top trying to help instill change to the general public, and then also getting the word out there to as many people as possible, no matter what platform it is, even if it's in the media, in pop culture, whatever. I mean, I'm just thinking of pop culture. I'm thinking of Kevin Hart with his recent injury. Like, I think he did some shout outs to his PTs at various points. Like, even just stuff like that will like help people be more aware of what they can help with. And I saw some videos of the stuff he's doing. It's pretty intense, even though he went through everything he went through, but which I was very surprised. But then even just like, teaching. And then that's where it comes down to, like, if the bottom up approach is like, even myself, like, I'm working as a staff physical therapist, as a contractor in a company up in Alaska. And it's like, it's even my duty that, even though I'm only here for a few months, to educate as many people as I can about what we do in the clinic. But then also I really believe in community involvement, trying to reach out to the community in a variety of ways. And in the clinic that I work with now, I mean, I've only been here a few months, but we've done injury prevention programs for skiers. We've done fall prevention screening for an elderly social group that's down the street from us, and just get involved in, like, there's a CrossFit gym not too far away, which that's a interesting one too, just because that can be a good moneymaker sometimes. But sure. but they actually do good work over there, and I'm impressed with what they do. It's going to take both sides of this to really get it to where it needs to be, and it's going to be a long haul. I mean, it's about changing healthcare. That's really what it's about, and how we perceive what healthcare can do and how it can help. And that's a whole societal viewpoint, and it's not just coming from one source. It's how we all perceive what healthcare is and what it can do.
Yeah, so I want to transition a little bit and talk about some of the biggest hurdles in healthcare. Obviously, we can't bundle all the issues in this episode, but, just the confusion in the marketplace, and we know that education is one of them. Let's start with athletic trainers.
Because a lot of people don't know that they exist, except for athletes that I used to work with them.
Yeah.
And then the PT world, right? That a lot of people don't really know that they can go direct to you guys. And then you have the personal training guys, the actual strength coaches, who I feel like everyone knows about, though, and they feel like they can go to the trainer for everything. Like, I feel like these lines are really blurred for at least for me, engage someone like yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And now that there's becoming, like you said, like, it's becoming more athletic trainers out in I guess you could say the free market, and having clinics of their own and operations of their own, like, that can in some ways make it more confusing, because that's a really good question, because like I often don't always think of it, but I do know that, like, that's something that the general public isn't sure about. And I'd say in general, it depends on what your goals are and what happens to you. So I would say that as a kind of a cut and dry way of thinking of it, and this isn't 100% right in every circumstance, but if you're having pain that's leading to consistent pain, I wouldn't say maybe daily, but you could have, like, consistent pain over time, then that's a good indication that's affecting your daily life. That's a good indication you should see a physical therapist. However, I could say that if you are an active person and you had an injury you suspect is from some sort of athletic event, and you're having pain that's causing, daily discomfort, an athletic trainer could also be a good resource. And not to say that athletic trainers don't treat people who aren't active. It's just that that's more of their specialty. But I mean, as again, the free market's growing with this, I mean, athletic trainers, they have the scope of practice to treat within the realm of pretty much athletic injuries in general, but there's some conditions that kind of overlap a little bit. But that's kind of a basic version of it. I feel like if you're not really having pain, you just are having weakness or feeling having any sort of, like, performance, I would say, issues, meaning, like, you can't walk as far as you used to, but you're not necessarily having pain. You just can't do it very well, or you're feeling weak trying to pick something up off the ground. Like, that would be a weakness is, as a general rule of thumb, without pain. as a general rule of thumb, is a good way of going to your personal trainer. And then they can obviously screen you. And if you're having pain with certain basic movements, then you go see a physical therapist or an athletic trainer. So I kind of put them in a little bit of the same category, just depending on what your goals are, because athletic trainers, again, more mindset towards athletic injuries. But that's kind of like a basic way to look at it. I just think it's keeping it simple. It's just like, if you're in pain, it's affecting your daily life. Then you see a physical therapist. If it's related to more only athletic things, athletic trainers would be good people to resource, but there's also a lot of great sports PTs out there too. And so it kind of really just depends on what their experience is. But so like if you go see any PT off the street, you want to just do your homework in terms of like, oh, are they familiar with sports injuries? Have they treated a lot of them? If they haven't, then you could either find a sports physical therapist who has had experience, or you can see an athletic trainer. So there's a little bit of variability with that. Does that kind of make sense?
100%, man. I mean, I just want to make sure that I actually heard you right then. I mean, because it sounds like if I have issues with mobility, right? Perfect time for me to go talk to an actual, strength coach, or maybe my actual personal trainer, if there's no pain with that mobility. Is that correct?
That's fundamentally correct. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and, I think that little conversation right there could be had for a year straight, I feel like, and maybe we would get some actual progress into the actual field, because I think there's so many people walking around that are at these desk jobs, and people like myself who like travel a lot, and even like you, right? You're on the road a lot, or you're moving from totally different environments. And it's like, you obviously know, but like most of the other people don't fully understand, where do I kind of go get help with this, besides me either just go to the gym and try to just move some things around myself, or do I just rest because I don't want to hurt myself, because I can't, I really can't fully move the way I know that I should. So should I just go home and just kind of sleep on my backside instead?
Oh man, as a person in this world, as a professional in that world, rest is usually never the answer. It's like maybe for a day, but that's it. Like I can't even that's just something that I can't endorse.
Hey man,
just rest.
Well, what's so funny too, though, because previously, once there was a sprain, they were like, throw it in the cast, right? Or they would make it like immobile for all the time. So I mean, talk about that for a second too. I mean, like, because the whole I feel like movement as medicine has evolved, right? I mean, give me some thoughts about how you think people should be thinking about it now, today, modern times, because 10 years ago, I didn't feel like it was different than what it is today.
Yeah, and you probably know this even too. Just it changes every 10. It's like 5 to 10 years. Big changes happen to healthcare. So it's like the things we were doing 10 years ago are like, well, we should probably have done it a little differently. And things progress over time. And it's I don't know. I was told this a long time ago early in my career, is that it's a medical practice. It's not a medical fact. It's like there's a lot of things that we are practicing constantly to try to revamp. And so going through that kind of that process of like, it's like when you have injuries, what do you do? And it's kind of hard to pinpoint it, because usually, again, the answer is it depends. Like, it's like, it really just depends on how bad it is. And like the best way to really know what's going on and what you should do is consult a medical provider. Cause like you could have like that example of like a sprained ankle. Like, there's a lot of people who sprain their ankles who don't necessarily, have long-term implications in terms of pain and dysfunction. I would say that, like, in general, if you sprain an ankle, no matter how bad it is, you should see somebody for it. And I would say that a sprained ankle, especially unless it's like you can't put weight on it, then go see a physical therapist, or an athletic trainer, somebody who can diagnose it quickly and tell you, oh man, you should get an x-ray, or no, you don't probably have to get an x-ray right now. Like we have some of those processes in place at this point where we have a pretty good idea of like when people need to do those sort of things, like whether they need to get imaging or not, or if they need to immobilize it or not. And but it completely depends on the person, how severe it got injured, where they're at. Like if they saw you the day after it happened, I'm probably going to say like you might want to just like take it easy for another day or two, not completely rest, but give you some exercises, gentle exercises. But then if it's someone who sprains their ankle and they're still struggling after 2 weeks and they can barely walk on it, then that's somebody I want to treat a little differently. And so the practice, again, medicine is just, it's always changing, it's always evolving. We try to do the best we can with the information that we know. But really the best way to know is to consult somebody, because they're going to tell you at the point in time that you're seeing them what you need to be focusing on. Because there's different phases of recovery. But there's also different ways that people perceive injuries and how it affects them. There's just a big issue. I think there's a big challenge of overcoming personalities in a lot of ways. So if you're a type of person that just puts pain to the back burner and doesn't think about it, but then at the end of the day, you're like, your ankle's killing you because you've been on it all day, then I'm going to treat that person a little bit differently than someone who's like, I'm scared to put weight on it because I don't know what's going to happen if I put weight on it. And so, so that's the part I see day to day, is trying to figure out where they're at with the injury cycle, how bad it is, what type of personality am I working with here, what type of person am I dealing with, and how is it affecting their daily life, and trying to help them understand that relatively quickly. It can be really tough sometimes, but I'm in a profession, luckily, where I get a lot of time with patients. I mean, we get a full hour one-on-one most of the times with patients, and especially for that first session. And then after that, you could get anywhere between, depends on the clinic you work at, you get anywhere between 20 minutes to an hour of one-on-one after that. So it's like you kind of get a lot of time with people, and you see them multiple times through a week, and you can really try to help them, chip away at what they're feeling, what they're thinking, really try to get into teaching them what's going on, and trying to find ways so they can resonate with what you're saying. Is difficult, but it's a really important piece of like what we as physical therapists can do to help. And I think in healthcare in general is taking the time. I think it's always the challenging part, is nobody ever has enough time, but taking the time to at least give the person what they need. And a lot of that is listening to their story. And so is listening to, hey, what happened to you? How is it affecting you? How are you dealing with it now? I mean, is it affecting your job? Are you having financial issues now because of, the pain that you're in? Or not quite getting that deep that fast, but that's kind of the realm of like things that we talk about. And so it's always much more complex than it's like, oh, you got an injury, what do you do? It's like, well, it just depends. So, but there's a lot of things you can do. You just got to know where to start. And if you don't know, then you got to ask. So.
I think that's a great point that you actually brought that up, man, because you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where it's a very complex puzzle, and each person brings different elements to it, right? Yeah. Like if you're at home all day and you have a totally free schedule because you're retired, that's a totally different way to kind of treat someone than someone that's maxed out, only getting 3.5 hours of sleep because they're working their face off. you know?
Yeah.
I'd imagine that whole like treatment process has to be totally different, and you guys kind of cater for that. I would have to imagine that's one of the biggest hurdles to kind of scale this whole conversation around education as well. Have you come up with any thoughts or any other type of solutions to how that can better happen, knowing that each person is so complex and diverse?
As it relates in my job or in healthcare in general?
You know what? I'll keep it right to your job. Just try to keep it simple, because healthcare can be a beast.
That's why I wanted to clarify. That sounds like I was like, man, how much time do we have? So I feel like a lot of we talked about education, how that piece comes into play. It's kind of ties right into I guess a couple things that I'll say is that something that I see a lot of is like part of being able to have a successful outcome is to build trust and get buy-in from your patient. And so no matter how you're trying to educate them, if they don't trust you, they're not gonna take any information that you say either seriously, or they're not going to take it fully, or they're not going to really understand it. And that's one of the key things I focus that on. That's one of my personal and professional growth like goals right now, is to continue to challenge myself to build trust quickly, build rapport quickly, trying to show them that, hey, like I understand what you're going through. I want to try to help you, being as genuine and sincere as I can with everybody, which that can be exhausting just doing that, let alone doing actually any other treatment. But just having that idea that like whenever a person comes into my room, they they want to be understood. They might not know it at the time. A lot of people come in thinking like, oh, I need to be told what to do. Yeah. But I kind of think of it as they were coming into the clinic and they want to know that I understand what they're going through and I understand how it's affecting their life. And then by asking questions and letting them talk, really just doing a lot of active listening techniques. That's kind of how I try to incorporate that into my daily job, is just trying to listen to them, have them tell me their story, try to be charming, try to be helpful, try to smile a lot, like just doing all those things to try to help be a good conversationalist and show them that here, like, hey, I'm here to help you. Like, I think that's a big thing that I don't know if it's always overlooked, but it's maybe not emphasized enough, I think. And part of it is because of, I've worked in a lot of different types of clinics. In this clinic I'm at now, we treat one-on-one for 60 minutes, but that is not the norm. I'm used to working in clinics that you have 10, 15 minutes of like face-to-face time, but then you got 3 or 4 other people in the gym doing something that you're trying to keep an eye on somehow. And that can be really distracting for both a therapist and a person. And that's something that I struggle with personally, is I get distracted easily. So that's something that's difficult for me personally. But yeah, just trying to teach, and it can be done. Like, people do it all the time, and people find ways to engage with people, even if they only have 10, 15 minutes. But being able to build that rapport quickly, build that trust, immensely helps people understand that you're on their team, not just shouting orders at them, but you're on their team with them, trying to help them through this. And I think that's a big thing that I didn't always think about it whenever I started out as a clinician. I kind of focused more on how do I get this person better from a medical side and less from a personal side. And so, and I think that goes hand in hand, and can't be overlooked. I've overlooked it for too long. And I feel like that's something that I've noticed, can be very, very, and I'm not gonna hit a home run every time with everybody, but at the very minimum, if that's what I strive to do, I think I can help a lot more people that way.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it is one of those things where it's those soft skills, man. Like we have so many tools out there these days. We can do this Zoom call. I'm in California, you're up in like Alaska, and it's like we can do this easily, right? Everybody can jump on an actual video call, and we got so many resources around us. But it's trying to scale the stuff that you just can't almost, because it's not meant to be scaled. Like building trust is like a one-to-one, sport. That's a one-to-one activity. It's difficult to do to the masses. There's some tricks people kind of talk about, but out to the masses and really getting that buy-in, like you said, that has to be the most important thing. Because if I walk out the clinic and I'm like, this is a waste of my time, I need to go back to working my face off. It's not going to happen, right? And so I love that point. And we're getting ready to wrap up, man, but I would love to kind of talk about a little bit about this work-life balance activity, because I think this is emerging conversation. I think physical therapy is one of the best careers to kind of take that will give you that work life crazy ambitious career goals that everyone has.
Yeah, that's a good topic to bring up, because that's something that really hits home for me. That's part of the reason why I think I wanted to travel, is because I needed to remove myself from my previous work environment. I'd worked somewhere for 5 years, and it was wearing on me quite a bit. But and I also wasn't taking care of myself the best way either. It's kind of this, like, whenever I was just starting out, it was more of a like kind of like the example you talked about, like having somebody working their butt off or getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep. Like, that's, in a way, that's kind of what I was doing. I was trying to work, make money, pay back loans, but also try to do good work and grow myself professionally. And that's a few things, but it's a lot. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to do. And then, of course, be around for family events. But I think physical therapy, they do have a pretty, I'd say in general, they have pretty set hours. Job is fairly organized. There is still a lot of paperwork that comes with the job, and there's a lot of extra stuff that comes up. And And it's definitely like, I've been to some doctor's offices and they see like some orthopedic surgeons and they see like 60 patients a day. And I don't get how they could do that, but we kind of get more of this like fluffy 8 to maybe 15 patients in an 8-hour day.
And even a lot, though. I mean,
for the time we're spending, I mean, like if you kind of compare I know I'm just comparing this idea. I know it's not foolproof, but a physician sees 60 patients and they only get 5-10 minutes with people. That kind of equates out to, I don't know if that math is going to do me honor or do me justice, but it kind of equates out to, we spend an hour or hour, 20, 15 minutes with people and we see 10 of these people a day. Yeah. That still kind of equals out. And there's paperwork obviously involved in any healthcare field, and that can kind of overlap into off hours. But yeah, that's something I'm really trying to figure out. That's a current personal goal of mine, is like, how do I manage that? And I think there's certain companies that make that easier. Like I said, the company I'm working for now is one-on-one, and we have to definitely like make sure that all documentation is ordered so we get reimbursed appropriately, versus if I kept working at the place I was, it's the documentation maybe didn't have to be as precise because I'm just seeing so many patients, and plus maybe the insurance companies aren't as strict on their documentation. So there is a balance to that too, in terms of the type of job you have to be able to have a little bit better of a work-life balance. But it's got to be a good fit for you, personally too, and professionally. Like I'm learning about myself is that I feel like I do better in this one-on-one environment. I feel like some clinicians would go to this one-on-one environment and just get bored. And so, they wouldn't be happy. And so for me, that like kind of that busy outpatient clinic that I used to want to do, I used to want to be in that environment. It's just overwhelming. And it can't handle all the, like I said, almost like I get distracted, too much, and that delays everything. So that was a big key for me of finding it, I guess, to answer your question, finding the right job for you, what your goals are. There are companies who can, I think, be a better fit for you. You have to obviously believe in what they're doing. So that's one thing that I've learned, is that finding the right job for the right situation at the right time of life for whatever's going on in your career. And another thing, I'm also trying to take an active role in, I just finally got out of debt a couple months ago. So I'm trying to figure out.
Congratulations, man.
Oh my gosh. That's a big accomplishment. And
it's
so
a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, so, I know I'm very fortunate because there's a lot of other people who are, and I'm 6 years out of school who are just like, I'm going to pay for the next 20 years. Like, it's just happening. Like,
dude, I got to talk to you about that in like a whole separate podcast, man. I'm not going to start a whole episode about that, dude. Alone. That's awesome, though.
But yeah. But it makes me think a lot about like, what am I going to do finance-wise for the next, however long I can, and hopefully retire at a decent age. And so, trying to find other things you can do on the side. I'm learning about myself is that I might not want to do too much on the side that's still healthcare related. I think I like to step away from healthcare if I can, at various points of the day, to find other side incomes. And so I'm figuring that out right now. I'm trying to see if there's ways that I can either provide a service or just like do something different, like learn a skill that I can make money with. And so that's kind of where I'm going with this. I don't know if this is the route you were asking whenever you're talking about work-life balance, but it's all about, for me, it's all about taking care of my family at the end of the day and being around. And like I was saying before, my previous situation I was in with work, I was just overwhelmed, stressed, and working 12 hours a day and not feeling like I could actually get away from it. And versus now I have maybe a little more of a flexible lifestyle, and I'm able to have a little bit better work-life balance, even though my wife and I are traveling everywhere. But that's definitely like part of the thing for us, is just trying to find that right fit job-wise. And then now that I can have maybe extra time to try to pursue other side hustles and possibly develop passive income streams. So that's kind of where I'm going right now with that, finding other ways to make income and not feel like I have to work all the time.
Well, I think that you already crossed one of the biggest hurdles, which is getting debt free, because then that really lets you have the freedom to be creative whenever you're not kind of with the weight of the debt, to kind of be like, all right, I got to do something because I got to make some money. And then that's your motivation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's probably going to come from a much different place. You'll probably find a much better fit. And the amount of different ways to make money out there. I mean, if you ever want to do podcasts, I can show you do that. I mean, there's a ton. There really is. There's a ton. I mean, you could throw ads on your blog or your podcast. You can sell products. You can make your own product, import from China. I mean, man, there's so many ways to go about just making a buck. It's crazy. So hats off to you, though, man. I definitely want to stay tuned to kind of see how that looks out, how you kind of build that out in the future, man.
Yeah. It's a new world for. I'm not an entrepreneur by heart. I guess it's not something I've ever felt comfortable doing. I've usually almost always been more of a follower than a leader, and so this is like a different world, man. Like it's just like something that I feel very hopeful that I can do, because you're right. There's tons of ways to find to kind of create independence for yourself, and that's something that I'm learning in the past couple of years, and it's really inspiring, actually. It's really cool to see a lot of other people doing something that I thought I could never do, but they were in the same situation I was and maybe have a similar personality type. And it's just really cool to see that a lot of people are able to do that.
Yeah, man. And I'll just say this too, because a lot of people think that it's the outgoing guys like myself who are, extroverted. I love talking to people. I meet random people, but man, I know so many great business people, even salespeople, or people that just have their own product lines that are introverted, or people like, Tim Ferriss. He's a very introverted guy. Like, he has a podcast, so he can talk to people. I mean, he's not like a hermit or anything, right? But still,
right.
I think that lots of the myths about what it took to kind of build something in the past are being shattered, and it's mainly because we have a lot more resources for us to kind of do.
Yeah,
at least something that's kind of fun out there for you.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing, is making it fun, entertaining, but also like something I can develop a passion for or like enjoy doing. I think that's the biggest thing, because I enjoy a lot of parts of my job, but there's also things that I want to just remove myself from. So finding ways to kind of get away and recharge. That's something I never really understood until like the last year and a half. Is like, I gotta recharge, man. I gotta find what helps me do
How
things.
old are you, by the way, Dan?
Yeah, I'm 32.
Okay,
so
yeah.
It's
no, man. I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off on that, but
you're fine.
I'm like 36, and I'm like, you know what? Recharging everything right now for me. It's it's my whole movement around working out. I mean, I still love working out, I still love being active, but I'm like, I gotta figure out how to kind of have some downtime too. It's mandatory. So yeah, keep going. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, that's and that's something I'm learning, is that before I would recharge by let's watch Netflix, let's have a chill weekend. And it's there's only so many chill weekends you can have before it's all right, I think I've watched every show that I've wanted to watch this whole 6 months of Netflix, that I'm just sick of it and I want to go do something different. And so that's actually one of the reasons what inspired my wife and I to go out and do this travel thing, is we love hiking. We love being out in the wilderness and kind of I've noticed, I'm in a small town, Alaska, even just walking around the town, that's the town's only 3,000 people. I'm used to being in places that are suburb after suburb of 50,000 of
wow.
thousands and thousands of people. So I'm just used to having people around, and even just being out in nature or in a chill rural environment is so great for me. And being able to hike whenever we can, visit places we haven't been to before, within reason, because I'm trying to stay. I always try to stay on a budget, but that's part of the reason why I'm in the situation I'm in with just getting out of debt. But yeah, that's something that and I'm really understanding the importance of it now, and learning that there's more to life than just work. I can do a lot of good things with work, but there is more to life than just work, and finding ways to balance those out is the key. So it's a lot of self-reflection, a lot of trial and error, tons of trial and error actually. But when it comes down to it, it's worth it. It's worth it to figure that out, because that's going to help you for the rest of your life.
Well, man, I mean, if I can just kind of close out on a couple comments, man, because it's been great talking to you, for one, and two, I love this how we're kind of putting the icing on this cake here, because recharging is something that applies to everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Something that I'm catching on to super late. I just started thinking about it maybe 6 months ago, after killing my adrenals, drinking Bang energy drinks. I still have coffee, but still, I'm all the worst stuff, you name it, I was doing it. I mean, not the worst, but legally the worst stuff, right? Right? Everything that was on the shelf, I was taking it. Let me say that. And so, it's one of those things, after you do that for, 10, 20 years now, because I've been taking stuff ever since I was 20 years old. So 15 years, let's call it. I mean, man, it beats you up, man. And you just kind of wake up out of this coma like, maybe I should start trying to get 8 hours of sleep on a regular basis. And let me try to just go out and go for a hike and just kind of get away and just be in nature. Because nature, the cool part about nature is that it's already slow. It's moving at its own pace. And so you won't run into a guy like me or maybe like a whole bunch of guys with a whole bunch of energy and bang drinks in us and they're all hyper around you. Nature's chill. So it automatically kind of mellows me out anyway. So I think it's great. I mean, I think it's a great place to maybe even talk about it. I mean, if you ever have any ideas around that, recharging people, I think that's a great conversation to have. I mean, because more people need it. Let me say that. So as we're about to wrap up here, please tell everybody how to find you. I know you're on LinkedIn. That's how we linked up. But if you have any other places that you want to have the actual audience reach out to you, please plug it up.
Yeah. I'm actually, it's funny you kind of contacted me when you did, because I literally just started like an Instagram on kind of some of the topics we talked about. It's at growth.in.travel. So growth.in.travel. Nice. And the idea that I have here is it's a lot of a self-reflection for me, but also an outlet to try to kind of connect with others, try to improve. The idea was for an outlet to like improve my personal growth, or at least have some accountability for it, as well as help others who might be going through something similar. And so it's literally brand new. I just launched it like a week or two ago. And so It's like very much in its infancy stages. But the idea is to share a conversation behind personal growth, what you're working on, what you feel like has been helping, what do you feel like you need help with, and trying to help just connect with others with that. And I'm not in a place where I can teach people what to do, but I'm just sharing my experiences and sharing what I'm going through as a way to connect with others who might be going through something similar. And so that's kind of something that I feel really passionate about. And with some encouragement from my wife, I kind of got started. So because that's an idea that I've always loved to kind of explore, is just self-reflection, self-growth, and being able to share that with others, I think is something that helps me get me out of my comfort zone, but also helps me connect with others too, which is something with a lifestyle where you travel everywhere, it's kind of nice to connect with others as much as you can. Then I have another, I guess I may put my email in the show notes, but I'll have just write that one, because that's something that spelling it's not going to do anybody any good. So just maybe reading it there will be fine. But that's the easiest ways to contact me if anybody has any questions or they're interested in anything.
I'll totally put those in the actual show notes for everyone, man. And you know what, though? I mean, I keep saying one last thought. I hate when I do that. but it's one of those things where I think, we need less teachers out there, and we need more people to keep people accountable to whatever is true to them, because there's nothing better than you teaching yourself or going through the experience and then just kind of learning through the process. I think that's the best teacher. Life, life is the best teacher, right? And so having that group, I think, could be great for people, man. So I'll definitely kind of follow it, and then I'll put links to it in the actual notes, of course.
Great.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Dan, man, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. This has been great. Thanks for kind of waking up early and kind of, let me just kind of pick your brain about a couple things. But everything's a wrap here, man. So we're done. We're out.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It was good talking to you too.
Absolutely, brother.
And just like that, it's a wrap. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Real Value Exchange. Stay tuned for more and more content coming out. I want to keep trying to drop more and more heat, more and more thought-provoking ideas for us to kind of share. And if you have any other thoughts around how we can better improve healthcare, please reach out to me at Joe Alex Lemon and link up with Dr. Dan. Let him know what your thoughts were about his conversation and his ideas. With that said, guys, we're out of here.
"96% of B2B buyers want content with more input from industry thought leaders. Launch a podcast and invite influencers on your show to position your brand as an industry leader. Learn more at salesculture.work.